Happy Tuesday afternoon and evening, everyone, and welcome to a very rare doubleheader Tuesday. I mean, doubleheaders are rare generally on this channel, but on a Tuesday, that's almost unheard of. We're rarely here at all on Tuesdays, but yesterday was kind of a busy day for me, and all day long I was thinking to myself that if I attempted to get a Raw review up after the show, I'd be really cutting it close just with the busy day I had and everything. So I decided to just do it today instead. And this isn't going to be the only video you guys are getting tonight because we are coming up here about an hour and a half before NXT goes live. Once NXT goes off the air, we're coming back. We're coming back for a watch-along because we were not here 2 nights ago for the Sunday watch-along. I ended up having to work, so I wanted to give you guys something back instead. And since we're going a little bit later tonight, I picked a fun 2-hour show. A lot of you have requested that we watch a Clash of Champions one of these days. So I picked Clash of Champions 18 from 1992. We're going to go live right after NXT. The link is already up on the channel, and we're going to watch this really, really good card later on this evening. So that's kind of a makeup for us missing Sunday, and since I wasn't here yesterday for the Raw review, this Raw review makes up yesterday. So just wanted to give you guys something back since, you know, classic watch-along Sundays are fun and we weren't here. So we're going to watch Clash of Champions here in just a little while. But today, all we're really going to do is review Raw. Last night's Raw I thought was a pretty good show. I enjoyed it. It wasn't like overly spectacular or anything, but we have a pretty quick turnaround between WrestleMania and Backlash. Backlash is on May 10th, which I believe is a week from this coming Saturday. So they don't have a whole lot of time to put the card together and really develop a lot of these stories. So it looks like I think we've got tentatively at least 6 matches, right, for Backlash already. I think 3 or half of them are confirmed, and then the other 3 are obviously going to happen. So Backlash is already coming together with about at least 6 matches on it, and I think that's going to be probably the majority of the card unless they add some SmackDown stuff over there. So we're going to talk about last night's Raw, how we're looking going into Backlash in just a couple of weeks, and we'll touch on a couple of news tidbits as well. The Rock's new movie trailer came out today, which looks crazy. Apparently, Liv Morgan is going to be cast in a huge movie that apparently is going to make heads explode for some reason. And we also have some interesting news on SummerSlam tickets, which is just insane. And anything else you guys might want to mention, please bring it up in the chat, and we'll do that here, and we'll probably get this done in less than 90 minutes because I don't want to overlap with NXT for those of you who want to watch NXT. So thanks for being here today. I just posted this link like an hour ago, so I'm not expecting a huge audience in here. So if you are here, that means you are always paying attention to what I'm doing, and you've got your notifications on and all that stuff, so I appreciate that. And thanks for being here on this Tuesday afternoon Raw review, a little different than what we're used to doing on Monday nights. But we have now WrestleMania firmly in the rearview mirror. And what do you guys think? Is it safe to say that we're not going to hear that song again? Fiend. Is it finally over? Like, I thought we might get one final video package tonight, or last night, I should say, on Raw, and it never came. So maybe we never have to hear that nonsense again. Just straightening myself out a little bit here. But now it's time for Backlash, and we got a lot of matches lined up for that. Raw was pretty eventful last night, but before we get to Raw, I'm going to talk about some of this wrestling news first, and just see if anybody is here in the chat that I can say hello to. People like Melissa, like Tatanani, Rodrigo, William Cullen. We got Nick Musser, Ryan Dempsey, Jay Lambo, Mike Rouse, Barry MK, Jonathan Cantris. We got David Brown, Daniel Barry Sports, Billy Sellers, Gilbert. Let me fix my screen here. All y'all that are coming in, thank you. Thanks for being here. Welcome to your Raw review. We'll get through this pretty quick because there's lots to do today. But before we do that, let's talk about a couple of interesting items of wrestling news. The first one is some crazy news regarding SummerSlam this year. SummerSlam 2025 in New Jersey, MetLife Stadium. And this is going to be the first SummerSlam 2-night event. Now, Andrew Baidala had some information on ticket prices yesterday that he tweeted out, and here's what Andrew said. Confirmed with On Location and WWE. Elite Plus package prices for front row floor centers, TV side, for WWE SummerSlam at MetLife are $40,000 per ticket. Not 14, 40. $40,000 per ticket, and it has been confirmed they are already sold out of this very limited quantity, which is probably only a handful. These $40,000 tickets include front row premium seating, in-ring photo op at SummerSlam, so you get to be in the ring at least, private transportation to events, that's kind of nice, elite welcome event, private section at all-inclusive pre-show hospitality with superstar appearances by Kevin Nash and more. Ooh, Kevin Nash. Post-show press conference access and desk photo op, tickets to both nights of SummerSlam, tickets to SmackDown and Raw as well. The non-center front row is just an elite package, and it is priced currently at $32.5 per ticket. Why not just round that shit off? Why $32.5? Why not $32 or $33? When you're talking about a number this big, what's $500? Jesus. And those tickets include premium front row seating, in-ring photo op, private section at all-inclusive thing with Kevin Nash and more, post-show press conference access, and tickets to both nights of SummerSlam and more. But it doesn't look like you get the Raw and SmackDown tickets with those. But the $40,000 tickets, that's going to be just that small chunk right there front and center on the hard cam, with the hard cam facing them. Those are the ones that are going for $40K. And obviously, these tickets prices are insane. But, if you're somebody who is extremely wealthy, if I'm a fan here sitting here and I got, $20 million in the bank, I'll do this for every show. I would. It would be like what's putting $40,000 down. It'd be like, me putting down $500. So, doing that would be worth it to me, I guess, if I had over $20 million in the bank and just complete fuck you money that I can screw around with for the rest of my life. But how many of those people are there in the world? So this is reserved for the most elite fans, the most wealthy fans, and they get their whole red carpet rolled out for them. And we've talked about the ticket prices too from WrestleMania, how insane they were. And that conversation was centered around like the cheap seats, the rafters, up at the top, and who's going to pay $1,000 to watch the matches from 300 fucking yards away? So it's just insane in general how crazy these ticket prices are getting. But if you want to be right in the front row for both nights of SummerSlam, Raw and SmackDown, get your transportation cared for, watch the media press conference backstage, meet Kevin Nash, then you got to slap down $40K to do that. That's insanity, but that's the world we're living in now. Holy shit. Absolutely nuts. If I'm paying $40,000 for a ticket, I want to referee the main event. I want my own entrance. I want pyro. I want everything. If I'm slapping down that kind of money, my God. So that's wild. SummerSlam, I'm not even sure how great the show is going to be, but you're going for the experience, and whoever bought those tickets should have a good one. Wild. Today, The Rock's new movie trailer was released, and I had no idea this thing was even in production. It's called The Smashing Machine, and it's a biopic on the career of Mark Kerr. Is it Mark Kerr or Mark Carr? Kerr. I don't even remember this guy from the very early days of the UFC. And the trailer looked really awesome. The Rock was the perfect casting for this fella. I don't really remember much about this guy, but the casting is perfect. He looks exactly like him. Now, The Rock in this biopic is going to have some hair, and his tats are completely gone. I don't know how that works in movies, if they CGI those out, or people were telling me on Twitter there's just like a makeup or a cream you can put on yourself. But, just watching The Rock in this this MMA role and just all of his like tribal tats are gone is just wild, but he looks exactly like the guy. Obviously got some, makeup and stuff on the forehead to kind of make him look a little like Mark. And I think that casting appeared to be perfect, and it looks like a pretty good trailer. This might be The Rock's best project to date. I don't know. Based on the trailer, I thought it was pretty awesome. It's got, I would think based on the trailer anyway. We'll see what the critics say about it. But based on the trailer, I would think this has to at least be as good as The Iron Claw, right? Without me knowing much about Mark Kerr, for them to make a biopic about him and cast some of the people in this, like Brock, Emily Blunt, that they did, this must be a pretty amazing story and should be good. So big news there. We might never see the final boss back in the WWE ring because he's still, pumping out movies, and They're good ones. So that looks interesting. Didn't even catch the release date on that, but I did see the trailer. It was all over social media today. Looked pretty good. And speaking of movies, apparently Liv Morgan has been cast in a huge movie that nobody really knows about yet, or nobody knows what it is. Obviously, Liv knows, but they have not given any official announcement. All they did was have Liv last night in a backstage segment on Raw ask for time off because she's filming a movie. But apparently this is like a big deal. Everybody keeps talking about that this is not just your ordinary wrestler getting a spot in a movie deal. This is a huge deal. And when the announcement comes out, it's going to blow everybody's mind. That's what they're saying. So I don't know what kind of movie this could be. I did catch a report from Fightful Select today, and I believe Sean did say that it's not a superhero movie. But whatever it is, apparently it is huge, and that's surprising to me. I mean, I wonder, like, was Liv auditioning, or was she spotted by somebody in Hollywood for her work in WWE? We'd like to have her. Like, how did this all come to be? I'm sure we're going to learn all of this, but I think that's great for Liv. I mean, she has been incredible. Liv was somebody, I've talked about this before with Morgan, that she was always somebody that I obviously liked enough, okay, but was really indifferent about Liv. Even when she won the title a couple of years ago, the SmackDown title or whatever, I felt like they were just giving it to her to give it to her. It wasn't really necessarily earned other than her just working hard, putting her time in. It's not like the fans were like, put the title on Liv. I just felt like nobody really cared. And she wasn't somebody that I'm going to pay a ticket to go see. Again, it's not dislike. It's just I was just indifferent about her and her wrestling career. But once everything started last year and that injury to Rhea Ripley and her winning the title and then Dom joining up for her with her, she is just really, I don't think she was in a shell really, but she's really just expanded her abilities, and she's become so good, so entertaining, so incredibly good at what she does outside of the ring and inside. Feels like to a degree even her ring work got better. Girl looks like she's in wars out there, and these are sides of Liv that I don't remember seeing before, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was. So she has really done tremendous in the past, 12 months, and she's been one of my most favorite people to watch on television, and she's really great with that annoying laugh. It makes you want to wring her neck and also be a fan of her at the same time. So I don't know how this whole thing came together, but I do think Liv is very talented, and I hope this is the beginning for nothing but just more success for Liv Morgan. Congrats to her. Can't wait to hear what this movie is about. If anybody's heard about it and knows, please fill us in the chat there. But all I know about this movie is that apparently it's going to be a monumentally huge deal. So we will wait and see how or what that announcement turns out to be. Congrats to Liv Morgan. Also, another little tidbit. This is courtesy of Fightful Select as well. So WWE has got that WWE, was it Unreal? That whatever that documentary is, really, really, really pulling back the curtain now on the creative aspect of things. And it's one thing to do behind the scenes shows, but now they're letting us into the writing room. We've seen glimpses of this. ESPN's done some 30 for 30s and shit like that on WWE before, but this is a whole docu-series, I guess, that's going to be on Netflix. I think it comes out in July, maybe. I forgot. And one of the most notable things about that trailer is that there was a screenshot of the whiteboard from the writer's room with all of the potential WrestleMania matches, which apparently this was a meeting, this screenshot or this footage that you'll see in the documentary was from like the end of last year. And apparently a lot of wrestlers found out about their potential Mania plans from the Netflix trailer. As Fightful Select says this, during the trailer of the series, a whiteboard was shown with potential WrestleMania matches. From what we can tell, the whiteboard was from a creative meeting during the winter months. Fightful gave a rundown recently of the matches when and how many of them changed, and in the week following the trailer dropping, we've heard from a number of talent. There were some talent that approached Fightful and said that they had heard rumors of their matches that came to fruition, but weren't ever approached with them. There were multiple wrestlers listed on the whiteboard who tell Fightful that they found out they were once planned for WrestleMania match from the trailer. Unfortunately, there were also talent who didn't appear on Mania who were listed on the whiteboard. Many in WWE were surprised to see Asuka's name, as it was said that her being back in time would be very ambitious. So I just think that's a funny little tidbit there that, WWE releasing this trailer, some wrestlers might have found out when we did, that they were originally planned for a WrestleMania match. So, you know, again, I don't know how I feel about this Unreal documentary. I'm sure, or docuseries, I'm sure it's going to be good. It's going to be very interesting. I'm going to watch it. I'm not going to get too butthurt about kayfabe because obviously it's been dead, exhumed, corpse beaten, put back in the ground, pulled out again, beaten some more, and then set on fire. So kayfabe is long since dead. But you know, now we're showing fans the creative process, and this is coming right after Triple H just spent a week of WrestleMania media telling the fans to shut the fuck up, stop criticizing, don't worry about it, just enjoy the show and let us do our jobs. Well, now you're letting us into your jobs. You're now opening the door and showing us what you're doing, and then you're still going to tell us to not criticize. Just fuck all the way off. All you, Nick Khan, Triple H, all you fucks. Like, it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So I still cannot believe they said some of the things they were saying this week. And especially when Triple H seems so, you know, so irritated that the fans have criticisms. I'm not talking about the bad faith twats. They're everywhere. I'm talking about the real, regular, normal-ass fans who just want to see a good product on TV from both companies and will offer criticism to both when it's warranted. That's all. You know, and the fact that even that is something that Triple H doesn't like or he despises. What do you think this docuseries is going to do? Improve that? All that's going to do is just give the fans more information that they can now turn into their own facts in their head and then blah, and then blurt it out all over social media. All you're doing is making it worse with things like this. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm sure it's going to be very interesting, very, very interesting to watch some of this stuff, but is it something that we need? You know, obviously, you know, The Rock was just on Pat McAfee a couple days ago talking about how the whole entire goddamn thing is a work. So it's not like this is going to harm it anymore, you know, like you can't kill it again. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But at what point, where does the evolution stop with this stuff? You know, is this eventually going to be carried into, it kind of already is, you know, we've seen wrestling storylines, plenty of them, where, you know, the motivations of a wrestler is because they're not getting TV time or they're mad at Vince or Tony Khan or Eric Bischoff. It goes all the way back to Eddie Guerrero pouring the coffee on himself on Nitro. One of the first examples that I can think of something like that, making its way onto TV. So none of that is new either. And we've even had, you know, Brian Pillman with the Booker Man, Jeff Jarrett laying down for Hogan. Lots of these things, you know, I was going to say this could evolve and eventually come into the ring, but we've already seen that. You know, we've already seen stuff from the creative room make its way into pro wrestling angles. So that's already been happening for over 25 years. So what's the next step? You know, that's the only thing. Like, I worry that one day we're going to have a match where somebody, the whole thing is going to be a work, but the story will be one person was shooting. And the story will be this person was supposed to win, but the opponent cinched up on a small package and pinned him. And then you're going to do a promo the next week. Everybody knows who was supposed to win that match. You know, like, is that where we're heading? I hope not. I hope not. So anyway, the docuseries is coming to us this summer, and we will review it right here. Also, tonight, Dark Side of the Ring. Am I going head-to-head with Dark Side? Oh, shit, I forgot about Dark Side. My bad. I didn't even think about that. I think we're going head-to-head with Dark Side. Or does Dark Side run head-to-head with NXT? I think my watch-along might be going head-to-head with Dark Side of the Ring tonight. Sorry, it is on Eddie Gilbert, I believe. I watched last week's with Superstar Billy Graham, and I'll have some comments on both of those tonight. Didn't even think about that. Elizabeth and I are going to watch Dark Side of the Ring way later tonight, like way later, but I kind of didn't think that my watch-along later is going to go head-to-head with that. Sorry. Just DVR that, watch us. Go back and watch Dark Side later. Anyway, let's move on to Raw now. Do this Raw review, bust this out. Before we do, let me just peek over here at the chat. Anybody who is here, by the way, we got about 100 people. That's not bad. Do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button for me. And as always, please subscribe. We got memberships open, super chats open, all that good stuff. Michael Cuomo has dropped in $5 for us. Thanks for that, my friend. Yes, there's makeup, to cover up scars and tattoos as well. It's actually not expensive. An ex-girlfriend used it to cover a scar on her arm for a presentation. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's Hollywood has all its magic, but apparently you can just do that right at home. But when I saw the trailer, I'm like, even if it was makeup, like, it wouldn't rub off. He's all sweaty and stuff. I don't know. I was just wondering how they accomplished that. But yeah, interesting stuff. The Rock was the perfect casting choice for Mark Harr. Looks just like him. Good to see Angie Law, Juice 81, Jimmy 1996, JT, DJG. Good to see you guys. Yes, good night of wrestling content. 2 big videos since you guys have not seen me since Saturday on the podcast. But let's talk about Raw because I want to have this podcast done before NXT starts. So those of you who want to watch that can watch that. And I'm not interrupting that as well, since apparently I am going to be interrupting Dark Side of the Ring tonight with the watch along. But I really wanted to give you guys a watch along since we missed it on Sunday. I felt guilty. I went into work, did them a favor, and I left y'all high and dry. So we're going to be back tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. I guess we could go an hour later. Do you want me to reschedule it after Dark Side? I mean, we could, but nah, let's just keep it at the time we've got. All right, let's talk about Raw last night. So like I said, I had a really busy day yesterday. So about, midway through the day, I realized that I'm not going to try to do a Raw review tomorrow night. I feel like I'd rush it. I feel like I'd try to watch the show and put it all together. I'd rather just watch it slowly and, especially if I got home a little bit later. So I only had like one eye on Raw for most of the night. But one thing I did catch right away is that Adam Pearce wasn't there. And I guess Adam Pearce was sick, like legitimately sick. So they had Nick Aldis filling in for him on Raw. And that did catch me off guard because I didn't see how that came to be. I just saw Nick Aldis. I think the first time I noticed it was when he was talking to like Penta backstage. Like, I'm not going to fine you. And I'm like, why would you fine him? You're the SmackDown general manager. What the fuck? And I'm like, what show am I? And I started thinking it was Friday. And I'm like, wait, am I in the wrong day? Where am I at? And I literally like got confused for about 4 seconds there. And then I'm like, no, it's Monday. It's definitely Monday. I don't know what's going on. Pierce must be out. So anyway, apparently he was sick. Nick Aldis filled in for him as the GM. And I saw he had a tweet out that said, Nick Aldis said, like, any advice on how to handle the Raw roster? And Adam Pearce quote tweeted him. He said, middle drawer on the left or something like that. Obviously a little green gimmick there to handle the roster. Fun stuff. So it was Aldis in charge last night. Now the show opened up with Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. Now we saw what happened last week. Braun Breaker showing up, attacking Roman Reigns and CM Punk and joining Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins in this new faction, which we were all hoping is going to be called the Dangerous Alliance, although I'm starting to doubt if that's going to be the name of it. It's probably going to be something Seth Rollins related or just something stupid. I would love it to be the Dangerous Alliance, but the Dangerous Alliance is kind of more of a reference to Heyman, and I think the faction name might need to be a reference to Seth. That's my thinking on that, so it's probably not going to be the Dangerous Alliance, but I hope it's going to be the Dangerous Alliance. So it's Rollins and it's Heyman out there. And Rollins dressed completely like a nut, of course. And he's interrupted by Sami Zayn. So I'm like, oh, okay. I thought Backlash might be a little quick. Like last week when we saw the beatdown of Roman Reigns and CM Punk, I'm like, well, that's going to have to be a tag. It's going to have to be Rollins and Breaker against Punk and Roman. But last week, I didn't realize how close Backlash was. So the fact that Roman and Punk were not on the show last night, there's no way you can do that at Backlash because you need more time to put that together. Plus, Punk and Roman don't like each other. So if they are going to team up, you need time for that all to come together. So I don't know where else they can do it. There's a Saturday night's main event coming up in May. There's probably a Saudi show, and there's Money in the Bank. So I think one of those three is going to have to be where you book that tag. That tag has got to happen, right? It has to happen. So the fact that Sammy came out, no Roman, no Punk, we can cross off the list officially that tag won't be happening at Backlash. Sounds like it's going to be Sami Zayn and Seth Rollins. So Sammy interrupts, takes, of course, great issue with Rollins joining Heyman because Heyman was standing right in his way during all that bloodline stuff, and now he's standing right beside him. Sammy brings up good points, but then again, so does Seth. And Rollins, talks about how they're friends and everything, and he says, look, I don't want this to be physical. I don't want this to end badly, but if you stand in our way, then that means you're going to be a target. And he tells the wise man, he goes, wise man, he can pull some strings. We can get you off Raw and cash you out. So basically, they're offering to trade him to SmackDown so he doesn't have to be put in the position of fighting his friend Seth Rollins, even though they've had 75,000 fucking matches before on TV. So Rollins tells Sami that they're going to need his decision by the end of the night. And then later on, when Sami's backstage, he runs into Karrion Kross and Jey Uso, and he's sitting there. And, I think this is before he runs into those guys. When he's sitting down, Heyman comes and sits next to him. And, they shouldn't have too much of an issue with each other, Heyman and Sami, as they did kind of get back together at the end there, didn't they? Was Heyman a part of that War Games? Anyway, I can't remember. But Heyman sits down next to Sami and says that if he accepts their offer for him to be traded to SmackDown, he will see to it that Sami Zayn faces the winner of John Cena and Randy Orton for the WWE title. He will get Sami Zayn a title shot if he moves to SmackDown. So now Sami's really got something to think about. He runs into Karrion Kross later, and he would run into Jey Uso later as well, but we'll talk about that when it's time. So Sami has to now think all night long whether or not he wants to accept this offer from Rollins and Heyman. And by the way, Braun Breaker was also out there for that, kind of standing there saying, or silently standing there as the threat. Sami even tells him at one point, hey, if you keep looking at me like that, I'm going to kick your head off. But I think it's going to kind of go the other way there. We had Rhea Ripley taking on Roxanne Perez. This was an advertised match. It ended in a disqualification. Ripley gets the victory when Julia shows up and takes out Ripley's leg from behind. Then Roxanne and Julia attack Ripley. Io Sky comes out to make the save. And that sounds like we got a tag match on our hands coming up too. And it was really cool just to see Julia on Raw. Especially when I like Roxanne, okay, but I really like Julia. Just to watch them be on Raw and then go into the back, I'm like, Julia's on fucking Raw. This is just wild. So that was cool. That's obviously setting up a match later on. And Ripley and Roxanne, I think they have faced before, but again, cool to see that match on Raw with Roxanne and Julia and Stephanie Vaquer apparently have gotten the call-ups. I thought Stephanie was just kind of get her a taste of Monday Night Raw and she'll come back full-time when she drops the NXT title, but she would have a match later on that we will talk about in a minute. Then we get a Logan Paul promo. So one thing I liked about last night's Raw is they weren't really boring you to death because since Backlash is coming up on May 10th, that's 11 days from now, they got to get the pedal to the metal here and get these issues going and get these matches booked. So it's Logan Paul out, talks a little bit about his WrestleMania win over AJ Styles, and then calls out Jey Uso. So there you go. Okay, that makes sense now why Logan Paul beat AJ Styles like I said he would. And this is good because I feel like this will give Jey Uso an opponent to beat. Even when we were doing our WrestleMania review, I was thinking that the Backlash match would have to be a rematch with Gunther. But then they ran the angle last week with Gunther taking out Pat McAfee, again, which we'll talk more about later. And then Gunther got suspended. I'm like, okay, that'll keep him off TV until after Backlash, and Jey is going to have an opponent. So I was wondering who that opponent was going to be. Now we would learn that Gunther is not going to be left off of Backlash, but he's not going to be wrestling Jey. So Jey's next opponent is going to be Logan Paul as Jey comes out to the ring. Of course, if he gets called out, he's going to come out. And he basically says, ain't no YouTuber going to take this off of me. And Logan tells Jey that he's going to lose that world title quicker than he lost the Intercontinental title. And then Jey Uso hits Logan Paul with one of the worst looking super kicks I've ever seen. Caught him right on the arm. Barely touched him. Logan Paul sells it like he got hit with a cinder block in the face. And it was just a terrible super kick. I mean, it came up right above the elbow. Like, come on, man. Make him look a little better than that, please. And no matter how many times you shake the camera, you can't conceal the fact that Jey just kicked him right on the arm. So, and then Logan Paul sold it like he got kicked in the face. So stupid. So that's going to be your Backlash match. I'm fine with that. This is going to be a crazy sentence to say, but it might be true. Do you think Logan Paul could pull a good match out of Jey Uso, he might be able to. I'm no Logan Paul fan. I don't like him. I would prefer it if Logan Paul wasn't around at all, but I have no control over that. Logan Paul is around, so if I do have to see his stupid, douchey fucking face, at least put him in matches that I can tolerate. And the AJ one at WrestleMania, I could tolerate. I was fine with that. I had no issue with that match being booked. I had no issue with Logan Paul winning that match. So with this, Jey Uso, he's not going to drop the title in his first defense. Logan got a big win at Mania, so now he can take a big loss at Backlash, and Jey can retain. So that match is pretty much all set. I don't think it's official yet, but it will be by next week. It's got to be, because Backlash is soon. After that, it was War Raiders taking on Finn Balor and the returning JD McDonough. There was a little I think Judgment Day Clubhouse segment backstage where you can still tell that Balor is on his way out. I still don't know what the end game here is, but they all say hello to JD, welcome back, JD. And then Balor's like, can I talk to you? And then they walk like 2 feet away. And he goes, I really wish you would have told me you were coming back. He's like, oh, I told Dom. Dom said he was going to tell you. So, obviously more problems there. And in the match with the War Raiders get the win here when Carlito distracts the referee. And then Penta shows up to get a little revenge on JD from last week, shoving JD off the ropes. And War Raiders hit the War Machine on McDonough and pin him for the win there. So that was an okay match, I guess. And then it was time for a Becky Lynch promo. Of course, we saw Becky Lynch turn heel last week on the Raw after Mania, one night after, or whenever that was, 2 nights after, one night after. I forgot what night it happened, but right after her and Lyra won the tag team titles at WrestleMania, they lose them back to Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez on Raw, and then Becky Lynch turns heel, attacking Lyra and beating the shit out of her. Now Becky Lynch is in the ring, and I actually did like this. I wasn't sure about a Becky Lynch heel turn, because some of the fans just insist on cheering her, although I feel like we are entering into this kind of like bizarro world. We had CM Punk kind of being booed tonight. Then when he was brought up, when his name was brought up, the fans were booing. So I don't know what's going on with the fans here. Usually when things like this happen, they snowball and they grow, and they tend to get worse before they get better. So if the fans have decided overnight that we want to be the heels every night, and we want to go back to doing this, and we want to just cheer heels again, most of the fans aren't even going to be doing it because that's the way they really feel, like they really want to cheer for these people. They're going to be doing it because that's what everybody else is doing. And I've been to enough live shows during my time to fucking see that is true. So I worry that all this is going to do is going to get worse, and fans are going to mimic each other, and then the next thing you know, it's going to be the cool thing to do, to cheer the heels and boo the faces. And sometimes that can be fun, but sometimes that can really screw up your stories when you're presenting stories to your audience in situations where they should absolutely cheer or boo the heel, but they're not going to because the trend is to do the opposite. And fans, I don't know, I'm kind of worried that this is just going to get worse, and fans are just going to go out of their way to sabotage shows and boo people who should be cheered and whatnot. I feel like when Cody comes back, he's probably going to get some boos. Punk might get some boos. And at least I hope that it's for everyone. I really don't want fans to start focusing on one person to where like, we're going to boo Cody. If you're going to boo Cody, boo all the faces then. Just don't single one person out to be cool. I just don't like that. I fucking hate it. So we'll see, how much worse this gets, but you could definitely hear some boos last night, and you've been hearing a lot of boos for the baby faces lately. So Becky Lynch, really this is probably the best time for her to attempt to turn heel, although I feel like the fans are just going to start cheering her anyway, because they always like to cheer Becky Lynch. And she does not waste any time in her promo admitting that she was the one that attacked Bayley. We kind of figured that once she turned heel, so we don't have to have like a 3-month-long whodunit thing. We don't have to wait and sit through Becky and Lyra being friends and holding the titles, and then it all crumbles, and then Becky turns or whatever. They're just doing it right now. And Becky Lynch talked about Bayley, and Becky Lynch was right. She said, this is the woman that's been attacking her nonstop since 2019. And she takes issue with Lyra cozying up to Bayley while she was gone. And she said, the damage was done. You were compromised. Once you became her friend, you became my enemy. And explains that's why she did what she did. And then Lyra comes out to the stage. First kind of big promo. I mean, this is a big deal for Lyra. I really like Lyra. Don't like her. I like her theme music, okay, but I don't like her name. It's just one of those, it's like, it's Braun Breaker, it's Dolph Ziggler, it's just Lyra Valkyria is just so fucking stupid. And I don't even like the bird thing, but I like her. I like her as a wrestler. I like her as a performer. I think she's great. And so she had my attention because I'm like, all right, girl, this is a big deal for you. You're going out there cutting this promo now. This is the first Women's Intercontinental Championship feud, like ever. Like Lyra's the first champ. Becky's her first feud. Her real feud is going to be Becky. So when you go back and look, at the history of the Women's Intercontinental Championship 50 years from now, Becky and Lyra is going to be your first program, essentially, after Lyra winning the title. So Becky and Lyra not only being set now for Backlash for an Intercontinental Championship match, but they have a story. Hooray! That's good. So Lyra, of course, she takes issue with everything that Becky said, and she was the one that suggests the match at Backlash. And then there is a brawl. She hits the ring. They start brawling. She takes down Becky. Becky runs away, leaves, and retreats through the audience. And then as Lyra is leaving, she's, holding the belt up to the fans, and she's walking backwards down the entrance ramp. Becky reappears and attacks her from behind and gets the last laugh on her. So it is official for Backlash. Lyra Valkyria will be defending her Intercontinental Championship against Becky Lynch. We thought that Becky would be one of the first women's Intercontinental champions, even before she came back. So I feel like her being the one to beat Lyra for it and Becky holding the Intercontinental Championship is extremely likely, but it's possible maybe it doesn't happen at Backlash and, it happens after that. But I have a feeling Becky will win the title unless Bayley comes out to cost her or whatever. But I feel like the next, couple of champions should be Lyra and Becky and Bayley. I think they should all hold this IC championship by the time this is all said and done, and we'll see how long it takes Bayley to come back from this attack at WrestleMania, and if she'll just show up at Backlash. I could see that happening. I could see Bayley showing up at Backlash and helping Lyra retain the title, and then maybe Becky wins it after that, and then Bayley beats her for it. I don't know, something like that. But Becky and Lyra for the IC title is set for Backlash. I'm happy that the mid-card championship has a story. That's nice. We had a Rusev vignette. This was good. So Rusev, of course, we saw his return last week, came out and attacked Otis and Tozawa as the New Day got the hell out of Dodge. And, it didn't really give us a whole lot of information about what kind of a run we're going to see from him, because he just came out and beat up two guys, just kind of like how Aleister Black just black masked the Miz, and that was it. So we don't know yet what Miro's motivations are, what he's going to be doing. So this is the first vignette, first little glimpse of that, where he says that after he left WWE, he fell into the abyss. I don't know if AEW is the abyss. I'm guessing it is. And he fell into the abyss on his way back to Bulgaria to heal and redeem himself. So I don't know if he was saying that he healed and redeemed himself when he was in AEW. That's kind of the way it sounded to me. I thought he hated his time there. But he redeemed himself and healed himself in the abyss, and now he will use his hands and jacked body for good. Now, I love that. It's a little glimpse. It's a little sniff of that Miro humor. It's not quite as good as the double-jointed wife stuff. When he was doing those Miro vignettes on AEW, oh my God, some of the things he was saying was hilarious. But using his hands and his jacked body for good, that gave me a little smile because Miro is in there. And he said he will hunt the flawed and the arrogant who chose to waste their career like he did. So he's going to be finding everybody who's making the same mistakes that he made and target them and come after them. And next week it was announced that we're going to get Otis versus Rusev. So Rusev's first match will be next week, and he will squash Otis. Welcome back, Rusev. I hope that everything he said in this vignette, he mentioned he will no longer fight for a woman that's not his, or wave a flag that's not his, get back to the Rusev that he used to be with the tank at WrestleMania, that type of stuff. So he really seems like he is reborn, and he has been redeemed, and I just really hope Rusev sees success, because we mentioned on the podcast on Saturday that, Rusev and Aleister Black, it was great to see them come back in, but they had really, really, really basic returns. And sometimes that's all you need. Just a basic return is all you need to reintroduce someone. But I was kind of maybe hoping from a little bit more from both. But Rusev just beat up Otis and Tozawa. Black beat up The Miz, and then they're going to go from there. And Black and Miz, I'm sure, might have a match as well. And I don't know if there's room on the Backlash card for that. But we might get... Or no, it's next week. I'm sorry. Aleister Black versus The Miz, I think, is this Friday on SmackDown, is what that is. So I'm trying to think what other SmackDown matches are going to be added to Backlash. We'll talk about that later. It was time for Stephanie Vaquer to face Ivy Nile. Fun match. Great to see Stephanie on Monday Night Raw. She beat Ivy Nile, obviously, so there's no reason to do a DQ finish there. She's the NXT Women's Champion. Champions need to win, and she did. And it's just really cool to see Stephanie and Julia, and even Roxanne Perez on Raw. Awesome. Women's division is beefing up. So backstage, we've got Nick Aldis talking to AJ Styles. He's interrupted by Judgment Day, Liv Morgan, and Dominic, and that's when Liv asks for time off from Nick Aldis because she's filming a movie, and Aldis grants her that time off. And then Dom was like, you know what? I'm going to need some time off too. And Aldis is like, sorry, son, you're the Intercontinental Champion. The champion's workload increases, not decreases, but Liv's a champion and hers just decreased. But Dom isn't going to get his decreased, and he's going to be expected to be there every week and whatever. So Judgment Day leaves, and then AJ was like, hey, man, I think I got an idea. So I think we're going to get AJ Styles and Dominic for the Intercontinental Championship. It seems like that's what it implied. But again, with Backlash already looking like we got a solid 6 match. Oh, no, I got AJ and Dom written down as one of those. So that'll probably be on Backlash. But AJ and Dom for the title could just be on Raw. That might not be a Backlash match. And then after that, it was time to hear from Pat McAfee. Now, McAfee said in the beginning of the show, because he's been on commentary all night, that he was going to have something to say and address the situation with Gunther from last week, which he did, and he stands up in the announce table and cuts this really, really passionate promo about how he loves Michael Cole and he's his best friend. He's the best in the game. I think WWE is really going to start repeating that Michael Cole is the greatest of all time. I still feel like that's going to have to go to Jim Ross all time, but, Michael Cole certainly is creating one hell of a long legacy in WWE as the play-by-play guy, as the announcer. And I think you're going to be hearing that more and more as we get closer to the end of Michael Cole's career in WWE, that he is the greatest of all time, just like the way they call John Cena the greatest of all time. So McAfee says that Michael Cole has had his back since day one, which is untrue, because back in the days that I couldn't stand Michael Cole, one of the things that really just was a perfect example of why I hated this prick was because of how he treated Pat McAfee. I don't remember now which WrestleMania that was, but it was one WrestleMania where Pat McAfee was backstage dressed nicely but wearing shorts, and Michael Cole chewed him out in front of everybody to the point where McAfee wanted to kick his ass. And it was this whole thing. McAfee told the story, and I'm like, that fucking shit, that's exactly what I don't like about Michael Cole. Keep your mouth shut, mind your own fucking business, and don't just start chewing somebody out who you've got no business chewing out. This is a former NFL player, you asshole. And talking to me like that, I would have punched him the fuck out. When McAfee told that story, I'm like, man, he's a better man than me, because I would have been choking him, for talking to me like that. It really irked me. And it's just one of those things, I hate, hearing people be that way, being assholes to other people. And it was a story that was just made me just so mad and angry at Michael Cole. Obviously, I've since forgiven him. I don't really care because Pat McAfee has forgiven him. The two made up. I think Michael Cole even apologized, and they put it all behind them and have turned out to be a pretty close commentary team. I don't really like Pat McAfee as an announcer. I would love for him just to not be the Raw announcer, but I don't dislike Pat, really. He's a little bit annoying at times, but overall, I can tolerate him being on Raw. I get it. It's the same reason why Logan Paul is there, and the same reason why Travis Scott is walking down to the ring. He's got notoriety. He's famous. People know him, and he's got so many outside projects, and he does other things. He's got a huge fan following, so it's just crossover attention. I get it. And that's why McAfee's sitting there and Corey Graves isn't, because nobody gives a shit about Corey Graves. So McAfee talks about Michael Cole, how close they are, and how, he'd die for Michael Cole, and that's just the way he is, and blah, 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 and basically wants Gunther. He wants to fight Gunther. He's calling out Gunther. And then Nick Aldis comes out and says, look, I can lift his suspension, but if you want to get your hands on Gunther, it's going to have to be in a sanctioned WWE match. So if you would like, I can lift the suspension and book this match at Backlash if that's what you would like. And McAfee said, that's what I would like. Pat McAfee versus Gunther at Backlash. Now, the last time Pat McAfee was in a real match, I don't think that whatever that shit he did at WrestleMania 22, I don't know if we can really count that. Not WrestleMania 22, WrestleMania in 2022, WrestleMania 38. I don't know if we can really count that. So that means the last match he had would have been, what, NXT? During the pandemic? Against Adam Cole or whatever? And was he in the War Games too? I think so. He's done some like 2 NXT matches, but I think those are like the real last matches he's had. So now it's going to be Pat McAfee and Gunther at Backlash. So since this is on pay-per-view, it can't be a squash. It can't be that much of a squash anyway. Pat McAfee is going to have to make this competitive, which I think a lot of fans aren't going to like, but I'll be all right with it as long as it's a definitive win for Gunther. You know, Pat McAfee, he can get some offense in. That's totally fine. But what I think this needs to be is Gunther toying with him. You know, even if Gunther gets knocked on his ass a couple of times, he's never really going to lose control of the match. And, you know, maybe he's going to be like a cat playing with a toy because you're going to have, I don't know how long this match is going to go, 10 minutes, 10 to 15. Somewhere in there, this match is probably going to go in terms of time. So Gunther, you know, if he kind of toys with him a little bit, you can burn some time that way. Even if McAfee gets some offense in, you know, Gunther's not going to panic. He's just going to, you know, deal with it and combat it. So I just don't want it to be a situation where Gunther just barely wins. But that's probably what's going to happen. It's probably going to be a situation where Gunther barely wins. But he should win with a finger on it with fucking Ludwig Borga pinning Tatanka, man. Just one finger. That's what I hope it is. And interesting that out of all these years, all these opportunities to put Pat McAfee back in the ring, they just randomly decided to do this here. And I do like it because it does buy time until you need to get back to Jay and Gunther, if you're even going to do that. And you're probably not. What I think this might be is to give Gunther something to do until you get to the draft, and then you just move him. So if you move Gunther or something, then he's not going to have to worry about a rematch with Jey Uso. So that could happen and that's assuming we are even getting a draft soon. I think we're going to have to, right? But otherwise, if he doesn't, then after this McAfee match, you know, I feel like Gunther might have to be the next person to face Jay so he can get his rematch. So maybe you book that on Saturday night's main event. And if the McAfee stuff is still continuing after Backlash, like if Gunther does something to McAfee, I don't know if it's going to be a write-off because I don't think Pat McAfee needs to go back to do college football for many, many months, right, at the end of the summer. So he's not, unless he's got some small obligation, he's got to be off TV for a couple of weeks. Maybe the Backlash match is a way to write him off of that. But if not, and McAfee's going to be on Raw 2 days later calling the show, you know, then, you know, maybe he does something whenever the Gunther and Jay match happens to cost Gunther, because Jay, I feel like, is going to have to carry the title at least into the middle of the summer. And probably drop it at the very latest at SummerSlam, I would think. But SummerSlam is probably going to be the destination for Jay dropping it. So between now and then, he's going to have to survive. So you got to put him in situations where he can survive. So Logan Paul's one good match. McAfee's caught up with Gunther right now. Then when you book that match, maybe you can have some outside interference. And then you got the Money in the Bank and whatever else they got coming up. So Jay getting to SummerSlam with the title, he's got to survive whatever he does up until that. So at least we know he's definitely going to get a win over Logan Paul. And we'll see whenever Gunther, if he does get a rematch or expresses any desire to have one, if he stays on Raw. So then backstage, we see Jey Uso and Sami Zayn. And Jay says to Sami, hey, whatever you do, I think you're going to make the right call. You know, and we saw the little tease last week where a lot of fans, you know, thought that Sami was going to turn on Jay the way he was standing there. It felt like there was some seeds planted for Sami Zayn turning heel. And I was like, you know, maybe Sami will accept Rollins' offer. Like, could Sami join the Dangerous Alliance? You know, how would Jay feel about that? So their interaction backstage, I thought maybe was hinting to that, but then they wound up hugging. Jay said he supports him no matter what, because Jay can understand. Even if Sami makes the decision to do it, then apparently Jay's cool with it. He goes, whatever decision you make, I'm sure it'll be the best one for you. And what was funny about this is I was sitting right here at my desk, but I had Raw on over there at my back monitor. I got 3 monitors here. It's on the back monitor. I'm faced this way doing some work over here, and I'm kind of watching the segment, but then Logan Paul comes in after Sami leaves and nails Jay in the face with a punch. And it looked so good and sounded so real that it jump scared me. Like it went pop. No, I literally went, I was like, geez. I'm like, damn, did he really punch him? Like, just because it was in my peripheral and I wasn't expecting it, I thought the segment was over. I went back and I kind of had the volume up loud, and then bam. And it like literally my heart was pounding. And it just kind of caught me off guard. So funny story. So Jay got punched right in the face by Logan Paul. Obviously, that's going to be our Backlash match. And then it was time for the final segment. Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker and Paul Heyman want the answer of Sami Zayn. Are you going to join us? Or are you going to be against us? Or are you going to accept the trade offer so you can go to SmackDown and get a title shot? And so everybody's in the ring. And Sami says that, or it's just Sami and Rollins, I believe, right? And Sami talks about how close him and Rollins are, talks about how their kids play together and, you know, how they're very, very, very close friends and brothers and family members and whatnot. And he says that he will be a world champion one day. Sami intends on being a world champion one day. So they're kind of replanting that seed again, which I think is good. And he says he will be a world champion one day, but it won't be because of a favor. So with all due respect, go fuck yourself. Oh no, he said go to hell. He tells Seth Rollins to go to hell. And Rollins said, okay, well, you know what that means. And I guess that meant that Sami Zayn is going to have to face Braun Breaker one-on-one in the main event. So it's going to be Sami and Braun Breaker just absolutely destroys Sami, hitting him with, I believe, 3 spears. And we know that Braun Breaker spears, they ain't Jey Uso spears. These things are spears. These things would make Goldberg jealous. There is no spear like a Braun Breaker spear, and Sami ate 3 of them. Eventually, the ref just stops it. Braun Breaker wins via ref stoppage, and Breaker just continues to destroy him, all of those spears, and then he's got him in the ring, and Rollins comes in and stomps Sami's head down to end the show. And that's how the show concluded. So we didn't get any extra new member added to the group yet. And Sami did tell those guys to go to hell. He is not going to accept the trade to SmackDown, and he's going to stick around there. And I'm assuming that's going to lead to Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn at Backlash. Now, with Sami Zayn mentioning the championship thing, I see 2 possibilities here. Now, one thing I said last week, the minute that Braun Breaker came onto the scene, we talked about this in the Raw review last week, on the Raw After Mania review. I said, well, obviously, Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker versus Braun Breaker is going to be the end game here. Because look at the dynamic in this faction. You got Rollins, kind of the leader. He's aligned with Paul Heyman. Now they're bringing this young, just hungry monster into this group. Rollins is already a veteran by this point, an aching veteran who's had a history of back problems, couple of knee surgeries. He is not the Rollins he used to be, even though he still wrestles at an extremely high level. He's probably only 75% of who he was in 2015. And you can see the story's right there visually without having to say anything. Breaker, he's going to plunk Seth off of there. Eventually, and with the history that Paul Heyman has of constantly leaving his people for what he perceives as a better offer, that's what they're going to do. The whole climax here to this thing is probably going to be Braun Breaker taking the championship off of Seth Rollins. That's what I said last week. But then, last night, they kind of make you think that it might be Sami's year at WrestleMania 42 for that championship. And it might be. I would love for Sami Zayn to win the championship this year, maybe this year at SummerSlam, maybe at Survivor Series in Petco Park, where I will be, by the way, or maybe next year at WrestleMania 42. Maybe Sami Zayn wins the Royal Rumble or the Elimination Chamber. Sami winning the Rumble would be great. Although I worry that he might face a lot of the same criticisms and situation that Jay faced. Sami could win the Rumble. Who knows if he'd even main event the WrestleMania one of those nights next year, depending on it. But I feel like I now see two potential major WrestleMania matches, either Seth Rollins versus Braun Breaker or Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn. Now, I feel like this angle, I saw Sean Ross Sapp debating with a bunch of fans about this, which must have been crazy because I was reading some of the replies and I'm like, I don't know what everybody is smoking. But I kind of agree with him in that this is probably going to be no longer than like a year-long ordeal, and now with Sami Zayn just saying what he said last night, I'm like, oh, okay, they're going to have that match at Backlash. Rollins will beat him, and maybe they can revisit this thing next year when Rollins is now champion and Sami wins the title. And hey, last year at Backlash, you beat me and set me on my way. I'm back now to take that title. That could be a fun story, but it's going to be really hard to ignore the intensity and the rise of Braun Breaker. To me, that's the story. We kind of started seeing this a little bit in the two-man power trip before Triple H got hurt. You could tell Triple H was going to replace Austin. He was starting to get the respect of the fans more. I think when Austin was a heel like that, a lot of the fans liked Triple H better. They started appreciating him right around that time. And you could see it. He was already starting to turn a little bit into a face before he got hurt. And then when he came back in the Garden, he had that huge ovation. So I feel like that's kind of like the story there. We're seeing the same thing on SmackDown with Jacob Fatu. He came in and immediately overshadowed Solo Sikoa, where you could tell those two were not going to be able to be a cohesive unit for very long. That's going to have a shelf life. That situation's too volatile. Jacob Fatu's too unpredictable, just like Braun Breaker is. This guy is a Steiner. He is the nephew of Scott Steiner, the craziest motherfucker to ever live. You don't think some of that got passed on into his genes too? So this is a very wild, very unpredictable, and dangerously young piece of talent here that is the absolute future. And you guys have heard me many times over the years, or over the last couple of years since Breaker came into existence, complain about his name. It's one of my least favorite names that pro wrestling has ever had. And that includes Saba Simba. It's worse than Saba Simba. Braun Breaker with 2 Ks is stupid. And everybody says, well, he doesn't want the Steiner name. Why not? He picked his name. I don't care. I don't care that he picked it. Just because he picked it doesn't erase the stupid from it. It's a stupid name. And the reason I'm so irritated by it, because Braun Breaker is the future. This guy is going to be everything. He is going to be one of the biggest stars. He's one of the most can't miss dudes to come around in a long time. I mean, he's got that Brock level of money printing to him. And so there are going to be times when he's going to be on top of the world and he's going to have to make appearances on Jimmy Kimmel and on Fallon and host Saturday Night Live and all that shit. And I don't want Braun Breaker on Kimmel. I'd rather have Rex Steiner on Kimmel because that sounds a little bit less stupid. I feel weird. I'm a nearly 50-year-old fucking man on the internet talking about wrestling, talking about characters like Braun Breaker. I just sound dumb. I don't like it. I just wish people could. I don't like Roman Reigns either. I think that's a stupid name. I think Lyra Valkyria is a stupid name. There's plenty of names that I don't like, but the reason I get so passionately mad about Breaker is because you can tell that this guy is going to be literally the next big thing. And now they've attached him to Paul Heyman, which is going to solidify. I know not all Paul Heyman guys have worked out, the McGillicuddies and the Rybacks and whatnot. Braun Breaker is not those guys. He's not those guys. He is an absolute can't miss. He is going to be a megastar. So that's why his name bothers me so much, because we are stuck with it for the next 20 years, and there's nothing I can fucking do about it. However, if there was ever a time to rename him, you've got the perfect situation here. Paul Heyman can do it. We have decided that this man's family is too important to ignore. But the corporate management, intellectual property controlling assholes that run this place wanted to change your name, even though that's not the truth. He could say that. But we don't like that. And I hereby am renaming you Rex Steiner. And now he's Rex Steiner, and Paul Heyman can be the one to do it. It's not too late. They made Walter Gunther right in the middle of his fucking title run, and it was fine. So you can do this. You can accomplish it. It's not too late. But I know I'm dreaming. It's not going to happen. But at least if WWE ever came to their senses backstage and realized that name is dumb as shit, they could say, hey, we could just have Heyman come out and do something and cut one of his Heyman promos talking about his history with the stuff with Braun Breaker's family and how he knows that family and respects that family and thinks it's a insult that he's not using that name, and make this whole thing about it, and then just right there recrown him as Rex Steiner or whatever Steiner, Greg Steiner. I don't care what his first name is at all. Steiner, make his last name Steiner and just make him a regular fucking person instead of Braun Breaker with 2 Ks. That's some shit I would expect to read in a comic book when I'm 6, you know? So the Braun Breaker name is fucking horrible. So at some point, Braun Breaker is going to be the man. You can see this. He's too good. He's got too much presence to him. Like I said, he's a lot like Jacob Fatu. And there's going to be no way to prevent him overtaking Seth Rollins. So when I saw some of the debates on Twitter, oh man, this is going to have to run a couple of years. You can't stop something this good. Well, first of all, it's a week old. How do you know it's that good? And it might be good on the surface, but you don't know what the shelf life is like. And plus, I think a lot of the booking when it comes to stories like this needs to be done based on how the angle or faction or whatever is doing, how it's succeeding, if it's generating interest, intrigue, ratings, that type of stuff. And if the story is good, then extend it. But otherwise, I don't see how you can run something like this for any longer than a year. How can Braun Breaker play second fiddle to Rollins for longer than a year? He's going to be using this time to learn from the visionary, from the wise man, soak in as much as he can. But I saw a lot of fans saying, oh, this has got to go multiple years because the Bloodline did. That's their own. Well, the Bloodline did, or Judgment Day was like a couple of years. Yeah, but just this isn't going to be that, Just because you saw those 2 factions dominate a good chunk of time doesn't mean this one's going to too. It's not like WWE's in-house formula now that we're just going to have any faction that we create with big stars is going to have to go minimum of 2 years. That would be stupid to do that. We're kind of seeing that in AEW, where Tony Khan obviously has an end game for where he wants Moxley to end, but Moxley as champion is starting to bother the fans big time to where they're super pissed and super over it, and they want a new champion now, but Tony's not changing his plans. He's going to see this thing through, So we don't want that. We don't want WWE just to start making these rules up and say, hey, every faction's going to be a minimum of 2 years. What if it sucks? Or what if something happens like you see the rise of somebody like Braun Breaker? You can't tread water. You can't put a ceiling on that rise for too long, or, you risk stuffing it down for good. You got to blow the lid off of that, man. You got a star on your hands here. So the fact that people think that it's going to take until 2027 or 28 for Braun Breaker to win a world championship, are you high? Are you? No, it's going to be way quicker than that. So I think at WrestleMania 42, we're going to get one of 2 matches. Seth Rollins defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Braun Breaker, or Seth Rollins defending against Sami Zayn. Or we get a triple threat. We love those triple threats, right? Maybe yet another triple threat match. Think about that, actually. What if the main event of night 1 is Rollins defending against Breaker and Sami, and he wins again? That would be kind of funny. But I don't think it should be a triple threat. I feel that if the plan is to belt Sami or Breaker at WrestleMania 42, then it's got to be one-on-one. So which match do you think it'll be next year, and where are they at? New Orleans for 42? Seth Rollins against Breaker or Seth Rollins against Sami Zayn? And like I said, we still have 8 months of television. We've got a draft. Who knows where anybody will be. But I feel like when Sami Zayn says, I will one day be a world champion, I feel like it's the World Heavyweight Championship is the one he's going to win. I just feel like the Cena title and Cody and all that, that's going to take until the end of the year. I mean, unless you could have Cody win it back and then Sami win the Rumble and then Sami beat Cody and then Cody's got a 3-month run. I don't know. I don't know how it's all going to work out and who else they're going to try to factor into the world title scene. I think Drew McIntyre is definitely needs to have another run with one of those belts for sure. But Breakker and Rollins, right from the word go, to me felt like it was going to be the plan. It has to be the plan because it's set right there for you. You know, it's not like Rollins and Breakker are, you know, the same age, same spot in their careers, same spot in the roster. You know, Rollins is going to be putting Breakker over when this whole thing is said and done. That's just got to be the way it's going to go. So we'll see if it's going to be a WrestleMania 42 thing or if this starts happening quicker than that. But the first thing that's got to happen, we're talking about Seth Rollins defending the title at WrestleMania next year. He's not even the champion. Jey Uso just won the belt. So Jay's got to have his small little run. And then Rollins is going to have to kill time between now, probably in SummerSlam. Do you think that's kind of the plan? Is that what they're doing? Rollins and Uso at SummerSlam. So if they are, Rollins needs to have this match with Sami. Then he can do the tag with Breakker against Roman and Punk, and then maybe one other thing to keep him busy, and then he's going to SummerSlam. He could also be in Money in the Bank. You know, they could do something where they really make it volatile, where, you know, let's say Seth Rollins becomes he doesn't win Money in the Bank or anything, but he just becomes the number one contender because he won the main event of WrestleMania, and then he won it Backlash, and then he might have beaten Roman and Punk too. He needs to have a title shot. So you book Seth Rollins versus Jey Uso at SummerSlam, but you have Braun Breakker win the Money in the Bank. And so then already you've got tension. Already you've got seeds of distrust being sown because can Rollins trust Breakker? He's holding on to that briefcase. He's already a monster, you know, and now he's got this briefcase which says he can have a title shot whenever he wants, and I can't even prepare for him to get, you know, my rifle and shotgun out to, you know, to stop him. You know, that briefcase essentially means he's world champion. Because Breakker holding that briefcase means that title is mine. I can use this whenever I want. You know, and I'll probably already beat you straight up clean as it is. Now I got an advantage. You know, all Breakker has to do is just come out after a Seth Rollins match and cash that baby in, and he's the new champ. So Rollins would have to recognize that with Breakker holding the briefcase. You know, and that might make sense because you probably want to have one briefcase holder on Raw, one on SmackDown, right? I feel like Naomi's got to win the briefcase for the women, and she's on SmackDown right now. So Breakker winning it on the men's side, having the one briefcase on Raw, one briefcase on SmackDown, they could do something like that. And if they did something like that, that would prove what I was saying, what Sean was arguing with those guys on Twitter, that this is going to be a much shorter-lived thing than fans think. You know, plus you got to think about health. You know, what if Seth Rollins gets injured in the middle of this? You know, we don't want that to happen either. So, you know, you just got to try to get what you can out of this. And I think like a year is and a year's plenty. A year is a long time. A year is not a short amount of time. So if you run this whole angle with it blowing off or culminating a year from now, that seems likely. But if you do something like I suggested and have Breakker win the Money in the Bank as Rollins is going after the title, then I mean, shit, you could have Heyman turn right there at SummerSlam. If Rollins gets the title match, but then Breakker is the briefcase holder, Heyman's looking at his two guys there being like, I should go with Breakker. We should have him cash in and just kill Seth and win, and then I'll turn on Seth, and then it'll just be Breakker, be the only Paul Heyman guy, and he'll be all by himself. But if not, if this faction is going to last some time and it's going to grow, I would chuck Becky Lynch in there too. So here's what we're looking at for Backlash. John Cena versus Randy Orton for the WWE title. Lyra Valkyria defending her IC title against Becky Lynch. We're going to get Gunther versus Pat McAfee. We're likely going to get Jey Uso versus Logan Paul, or we definitely are, but I don't think it's been announced yet. And we're going to probably get Sami Zayn versus Seth Rollins. In addition to that, we could get AJ Styles versus Dominic, but I also feel like that's a match they could book for Raw. So that might not be Backlash because so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, it would be 4. That would be 5 Raw matches if AJ versus Dom was put on Backlash. That would be 5 Raw matches, 1 SmackDown match with Cena and Orton. That doesn't seem likely. So AJ and Dom probably won't be on the show, and they'll probably... What are they going to do on SmackDown? What matches are going to be added to Backlash on SmackDown? Help me. Something with Jade and Naomi and stuff? I don't know. We're going to get some matches over there. So maybe like a 7-match card. That would be kind of cool. All right, let me see what you guys are saying here in the chat. Linda, appreciate the $2. Seth's coat was $14,000 by a Pakistani designer. Interesting. $14,500 by a Pakistani designer. Okay. Rasta was the brand. Interesting. Doug, you think I'm overthinking the crowd? No, I'm not. That's what they're doing. Crowd mimics. We've all seen this with our own eyes. Look at what the crowd was doing after the overseas tour. Now they're all doing the singing. They want to be like the London crowds and the UK crowds. We're followers over here. We're not leaders. Fans are going to just do what everybody else around them does. And that's why I worry that stuff like this, these little trends that we're seeing, are just going to snowball. I mean, that fucking what chant stuck around for 30 years, it still lingers, man. Like, enough's enough. Jonathan Cantris, appreciate the $2. Boos were a KC thing since Las Vegas booed Seth last week. Yeah, well, they were booing Punk when his name was brought up, right? So it wasn't just Seth. Oh, yeah, Tiffany versus Nia Jax. There you go. U.S. title match. Yeah, for the men, right? Jacob against, maybe it's like a multi-man or something like that. So, yeah, Tiffany versus Nia Jax will probably happen. So that's going to put you at, if we take away AJ and Dom, that will put us at 6 matches. And who knows what else? I mean, I don't think it'll be Chelsea and Zelina. I still can't believe Zelina won the United States title. I was hoping that belt would get a better of a start. Chelsea Green as champion was wonderful, but she didn't do anything in her championship other than be her entertaining Chelsea self. Other than that, it wasn't very much an eventful run whatsoever. So I don't need to see Zelina and Chelsea at the show at all. I'd rather just see that at SmackDown. Captain Ford Guns, thanks for the 5. I can definitely see Tiffany and Nia running it back at Backlash. Tiffany still has yet to secure a clean one-on-one victory over Nia. Correct. And since she did secure that over Charlotte, you would think that she's got to get one over Nia Jax as well. I guess there's been some rumblings of, Charlotte, I don't know when we're going to see her next, but when she comes back, I think there needs to be some sort of a difference in her. And I don't know what that difference should be. People talk about, her character, this character that she developed. I don't even know if it was a character. It was nothing. She was the same. The problem with Charlotte is she was always the same. Her outfits changed, so did her face a few times, but she never did. Her character was just heel or babyface was largely the same. I'm the queen and I say this every time I come out there and that's it. And I think it's starting to dawn on her and the WWE that none of that shit is relatable to any fans at all. And she was shit on pretty hard by the audience since her return. People attacked her at the roast thing, which led her to tweet out, I don't know, I'm just going to wrestle. It seems like she's kind of being worn down a little bit. And I think she could potentially have her feelings hurt. But there's also probably a lot of things going through her mind as well regarding her career, her character. And I'm hoping that she wants to change those. Like, I don't want to see Charlotte come back to TV primarily because whenever we see her, it's just the same. She's always the same. And what she isn't even very good. When she first started out, I really liked Charlotte. Thought she got a promo. Of course, she's a great worker. She's got that family name. But, just the way WWE shoved her down our throats, literally, like Charlotte all the time, worming her way into that WrestleMania 35 main event. I'm like, Jesus, WWE, enough with the Charlotte. Nothing against her, but man, this is the type of shit that alienates your wrestlers from fans. This is the type of shit that makes fans angry, is when, somebody is just so shamelessly forced upon everyone. And that really hurt Charlotte. So it wasn't really all her fault. It was WWE's doing the booking here. But we've seen the issues that she's had with women in the locker room that has spilled on screen with Becky Lynch and Nia Jax and then Tiffany Stratton. She just always seems to have issues. And she doesn't seem like she's really well liked. But then again, there's been a lot of, since a lot of this chatter has been going on, I've been noticing a lot of good posts about Charlotte, showing videos of her being a good person. One of them specifically for a little fan backstage that really wanted to meet Alexa Bliss, and Charlotte walked all over the fucking arena looking for Alexa Bliss to drag her over to this fan. You know, when Charlotte brings her over, you know, Charlotte didn't even know she was on camera, but you can see Charlotte like kind of holding her heart, like, oh, that's so cute. Like, she's a good person, you know. So Charlotte, whatever, you know, she comes back and does, and whatever type of demeanor she has, I think just needs to be drastically different. I'm not saying like come back as like an Undertaker character or something like that. Don't completely change your look, wear black lipstick and dye your hair black. You don't have to go crazy. You just have to be different, you know, and try to present yourself in some way that's going to make the fans give a shit about you and not want to change the channel, because you have go away heat. She has X-Pac go away channel changing heat. She doesn't have Dominic heat. She doesn't have the fun kind of heat. She has the type of heat where fans literally scowl at the sight of her. And you got to change that, because this is going to be your most decorated women's WWE star in history. She's going to go down right alongside of our father as arguably the best of their genders. And I would like Charlotte to not be despised by the entire audience forever if that's going to be her future. So I hope that when Charlotte comes back, she can do something that gets the fans to kind of change their perception or tone towards her. Because if she comes out there dressed like a fucking banana again, like she did when she returned, all the crowd is going to do is going to crap on her face. So we'll see when Charlotte comes back, where she goes and what she does and who she works with. All right. Okay, cool. Well, that made it to the end of our notes. We got about 10 minutes until NXT starts. Should we just fire it up and watch it together? No, I got to have a snack first. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. We are going to be back in 2 hours because we are going to do a watch along of Clash of the Champions 18 from January of 1992. This one is fun, really fun tag team main event. When I scheduled this watch along to make up for Sunday's watch along, I kind of didn't realize that we are going to be going head to head with Dark Side of the Ring. So I'm sorry about that if you now have to choose, but I recommend just recording Dark Side and watching the show with us and then watching Dark Side later. Elizabeth tonight gets off at midnight, so she'll be home later. And her and I will watch Eddie Graham. Or Eddie Gilbert. Eddie Gilbert. Superstar Billy Graham was last week. Eddie Gilbert is tonight. And for those of you who don't know much about Eddie Gilbert's career, check it out. It's probably going to be a good episode. At least I think it's on Eddie Gilbert. That's what the memory I had in my head. So don't take that as a fact. Yeah, Eddie Gilbert tonight. Interesting and sad story. And I remember his death. I was a senior in high school when he died. So that should be an interesting Dark Side. All right, guys, have a nice little break. Hopefully you can join us back in just a couple of hours for WCW Clash of the Champions. Thanks for hanging out this afternoon, this very odd Tuesday Raw review, but I wanted to get one done since it was kind of an eventful show last night. You guys have a good couple of hours. See you real soon. Peace.